Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. It's quiet on the Michigan athletics scene this week, so we're going to get our football recruiting fix for the month. Joining me on our game day segment will be recruiting insider EJ Holland from the Wolverine and Rivals. First, a few of my thoughts to get us going. Juwan Howard and his team started workouts over the weekend and will be shaking the rust off before heading to Madison this Sunday. We have to expect it's going to take a few games to get things back in sync. A win in Madison has never been easy for us, and after a 2-week layoff, beating this Wisconsin team will be a tall order. We moved up to number 3 in the polls without even playing a game this week. Ohio State is right behind us at number 4, and we head to Columbus in about a week. I still believe we're in the hunt for a Big Ten title, but the road will get bumpy in the next 3 weeks. I'm glad all of our winter sports teams will be back in action, though. Kim Barnes-Arico's team is off to the best start in program history, and hockey was on fire before the break, so again, great to have everyone back in action. My guest today says, make no mistake about it, the new coaching hires were brought here for 2 reasons. 1, they are very talented young coaches. 2, we need a new approach to how and where we recruit. Recruiting insider EJ Holland from the Wolverine and Rivals is our game day guest here on the Michigan Man, so stay with us. Here with us on our game day segment this week on the Michigan Man is recruiting insider EJ Holland from the Wolverine and Rivals. EJ, great to have you with us.
Matt, thanks for having me.
And as we mentioned, it is your first time here with us on the show. And tell our listeners how long you've been over at the Wolverine and where you were before that, a little about yourself.
Yeah, so before I joined the Wolverine, I spent 5 years covering the University of Texas. I was based out of Dallas and kind of just flew around and saw recruits wherever they were at and kind of do the same thing over at the Wolverine. Now I actually live in Chicago. I just moved out here last year. I've only been on the beat for about a year and a half. About a year and a half I've been on the beat. And so far it's been a really cool transition. I'd never really left the state before, to move. I've always lived in Texas my whole life. I actually really didn't leave the state to travel anywhere until I was 21. So it's a complete new experience for me. Obviously, I had to cultivate new relationships when it came to recruiting, and, that's the biggest thing. And so I'm still kind of settling into the beat. This is like my first full cycle where I've gotten to know the kids when they were younger and now as they're heading into the final stretch of their recruitment. So, yeah, it's been fun. Michigan's a lot like Texas in terms of it being a big public school, having a rabid fan base, being a blue blood. So that's made the transition easier. The fan base is great. And, I'm having a really fun time aside from having to shovel out some snow.
Well, we're all dealing with that, but it's great to have you on board at the Wolverine and covering Michigan recruiting. And as you know, your readers, my listeners, can't get enough of it. So before we talk about what's going on with the class of 22, let's spend a few minutes on our recent recruiting class, EJ. And, all things considered, and by that I mean the Harbaugh contract talks, a 2-4 season, the pandemic, et cetera, this turned out to be a very good class in the end, didn't it?
Yeah, it is surprising, covering, like I said, Texas for a long time. Obviously, I went through Charlie Strong getting fired. I went through, the hiring of Tom Herman and the near dismissal of Tom Herman before I, moved out here to the Midwest. And obviously they ended up firing Tom Herman. Anyway, my point is that at Texas, you had guys decommitting left and right during times of change, during times of uncertainty, and Michigan did an absolutely phenomenal job of keeping its class together. I mean, I texted my coworkers and I was like, I don't know how guys aren't decommitting. The class bond was exceptional. I mean, these guys really stuck together. They really believed in their mission. Everybody signed early, so that was also a big surprise. I mean, these guys knew that Harbaugh was fighting for an extension, and, Don Brown obviously got dismissed, and there was some uncertainty with other assistant coaches as well, and it didn't matter. They all really believed in themselves. They kind of took the Jim Harbaugh line and bet on themselves. But they all stuck together. It was a terrific class. You have a ton of offensive weapons, especially at the skill positions with guys like Xavier Worthy, Donovan Edwards, obviously J.J. McCarthy leading the way at quarterback. And they finished strong on the defensive side of the ball, especially along the defensive line, which was a big question mark, landing 3 defensive tackles on signing day. They have a great talent at linebacker in Junior Colson. So overall, it was just a surprisingly strong class, considering that everything that could go wrong went wrong. I mean, from on-the-field results, like you said, the pandemic, the Harbaugh extension talks, the assistant coaching changes, these guys all stuck together, which should tell you a lot about their character and their belief in Michigan. That's really where they wanted to be, and they truly feel like they can change the culture and change the program around.
Well, the Xavier Worthy situation, I get a lot of questions about that. Of course, he is signed and was planning to be here early, enroll and spend the winter here, but that didn't happen. A lot of my listeners are a little nervous about that. Is there any reason to be concerned?
Yeah, that's giving me a lot of gray hairs. I think that with Xavier Worthy, it's a really peculiar situation. It's one of the weirdest ones, I've ever covered. And, before I was at Texas, I did recruiting regionally for the Dallas Morning News. I've been doing this for like 10 years, and this is one of the weirdest recruitments I've ever seen as far as, the post-recruiting situation. His recruitment was strange in general. I mean, he was a Michigan lean early on, then he silently committed to Oregon, and then had some arguments with Oregon and ended up flipping to Michigan behind the scenes and committed. Then he visited Alabama. And so his recruitment itself was a little bit of a circus, but this post-recruitment has been just a crazy, drama show. He has been in Ann Arbor. We were working to confirm that he is still actually there. He was supposed to enroll early. There was a paperwork issue on Michigan's end. I'm told it's not on Xavier Worthy's end. So if Michigan would have just gotten the paperwork issue figured out, he would be enrolled right now. He finished with, a high GPA. I believe he was one of the first, if not the first kid in this class to graduate early. So it's nothing on his end from an academic standpoint. He signed. He was ready to get on campus early. There was a paperwork issue on the Michigan side. Now, the week that the early enrollees moved in, Xavier Worthy flew out to Ann Arbor and was kind of just there. And we were waiting to see if Michigan was going to fix the paperwork issue. At first, it seemed like they were going to get him in. We reported that he was going out to Ann Arbor, that Michigan had got things done. Well, Michigan didn't end up getting things done on the paperwork side, but he was there, and we're still working to see if he is there. So it's just a really odd situation, especially, it's the dead period right now. So if you're not an early enrollee, you can't really work out with the team or meet with the coaches face-to-face. So it's just a really odd situation. As far as, being worried, obviously there were a lot of talks about Texas and Steve Sarkisian potentially getting involved. And I think there was some truth to those rumors, and Xavier Worthy, I think, let it slip that he actually talked to Sarkisian. So I feel like there's still some minor reason to worry, but the fact that he's out in Ann Arbor on his own, I think is a really good sign. So I would say, my worry level is low despite everything going on, but you just never know with this kid. I mean, there's been so many twists and turns. Again, just a really odd situation with him being in Ann Arbor and not being enrolled.
Well, I guess we have to say stay tuned on that one, and we'll see what happens with Xavier. The two kids we hear about the most in this class, though, are, along with Xavier, J.J. McCarthy and Donovan Edwards. Should we expect them to possibly make big impacts this fall, EJ?
Yeah, I mean, Donovan is guy that's rated top 100 nationally. Honestly, I think he's rated a little bit too low. I have him graded closer to a 5-star guy. He was phenomenal as a senior. He really took that. What impressed me the most about Donovan is he really took that step as a senior. As a junior, I thought he was a really good prospect. As a senior, I thought he was a special prospect. So he improved his speed, his strength, his explosiveness, everything about his game really took that leap to the next level. Obviously, he led West Bloomfield to a state championship, had like 30 touchdowns or something this season. He was awesome. Every time I watched him in game, he, checked the box from an eval standpoint. He's a guy that can run in between the tackles. He's strong. He loves to run over people as opposed to running around them, but he still has enough speed to break the long runs. I think that he's a guy that's going to get in that rotation. Obviously, Michigan had a really odd rotation at the running back spot. I think they're going to figure it out this year, and Donovan's a great talent. It wouldn't be surprising to see him be a 3-down back. And I think a guy like Blake Corum complements his skill set great. A smaller scat back where Donovan can be, kind of the bell cow guy. At the same time, I think that Donovan can be that 3-down back. He's also a terrific pass catcher. West Bloomfield split him out wide a lot, so he can do a lot. I mean, he's a great talent. JJ McCarthy on the other side, I think, is a guy that's going to compete right away. I mean, it really wouldn't be surprising to see JJ win the job at some point this fall as a true freshman. I know Michigan hasn't had a lot of quarterbacks do that, but JJ's special, not only from a talent standpoint, but also from a leadership standpoint. Everybody that you talk to in regards to JJ, nobody has a bad thing to say. And the words that are often used aren't, special arm talent. They're leader, moxie, character, hardworking. Those are the words used to describe JJ, as opposed to, oh, this guy has a big arm or this guy can make plays. And I think that's, obviously really, really important at the quarterback position. But at the same time, he does have that elite arm talent. He's a guy that can make any throw. He has the escapability. He's not a guy that's going to rush for 100 yards or anything, but he has the escapability to make those Houdini, Johnny Manziel-like plays. He's also just a guy that can make so many off-platform throws, those Pat Mahomes-like throws. He can do it all. With JJ, honestly, I think it's just being more consistent. A lot of times he plays with his hair on fire, as Trent Dilfer would say. I think that he just needs to settle down a little bit. He'll probably make those true freshman mistakes if he gets thrown into the fire, just because he's always looking to make the big play. But when JJ settles down and he gets in a rhythm, there's no quarterback better in the country this cycle.
Another kid we hear that's coming in with a chance to play right away is Junior Colson, the 4-star outside backer from Tennessee. What analysts say is he's a freaky good athlete, EJ. Your thoughts on him?
Yeah, he is a freak. He is about 6'2", 225 pounds. He runs in the 4.5, so that alone should tell you that he's a freak. I mean, to be that size and run that fast is pretty special. But on top of that, his upside is crazy. I mean, he is a prospect that has only been playing the linebacker position for 3 years. So he's still new to the position, but still so advanced at the same time from a technique standpoint, from the way he dissects plays, the way he runs guys down sideline to sideline, and he can cover. He played a lot of 7-on-7, club 7-on-7, and he was really good despite, linebackers often being exposed in that setting. So he can do it all. You can put him at any of the linebacker spots. And he didn't have a traditional upbringing. He was adopted from Haiti. He did start playing football at a younger age, but he didn't really grow up on it, like the rest of the kids in this class. So he was still a little new to football. And so it's one of the really best stories in recruiting this cycle. A kid that lost his father, was adopted from Haiti, from a couple that's a different race than he is, obviously. And he, really, really excelled both from an on the field standpoint, from a social standpoint, and you won't meet a better kid than Junior Colson. And he's probably my favorite kid in the class, just from a guy that can make that impact, a guy that I think is a safe play, even though, like I said, he's kind of new to the linebacker position. He still has a really high floor. I think Junior is one of those prospects that has little room to have error on. I think he's going to be a great talent at Michigan.
Well, as we said, in the end, this was an outstanding class of 21, and with spring ball, hopefully, right around the corner, we'll get to see if some of them are going to work their way into playing time this year, or at least get a start on that. EJ, Jim and staff have more than turned their attention now to the next class of 2022. And before we chat about the 6 commits we have so far, let's talk about this new staff and their impact on recruiting. We've added Mike Hart, Ron Bellamy, Mike McDonald, George Hilo, Maurice Linguist. They are young, and a big part of the reason they were brought here was to get after it on the recruiting trail, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Jim Harbaugh's really taken a recruiting focus. You have to close the gap with Ohio State somehow, and that starts with recruiting. These guys are young. They're aggressive. They are willing to make relationships with everybody around a recruitment. You know, this isn't 1995. There has to be relationships built with everybody, not just the kid and the high school coach and his parents. That's also the 7-on-7 coach, the personal trainer, the mentor, anybody around a recruitment. And I think Michigan has kind of lagged in that area. This new staff understands how recruiting works, in 2021. So I feel like they did a great job of hiring guys that have that personality. Especially Maurice Linguist. He's a guy that's done it at a high level. Like I said, I covered Texas. He was at Texas A&M coaching defensive backs, and he was kind of a pain for me to cover against, I guess, just because Texas A&M was landing high-level DBs that were on the top of Texas's board. There's one cycle where he landed 3 top 100 defensive backs nationally, and then turned around the next cycle and landed a 5-star corner. So he's recruited at a high level. He's recruited at a high level in the South. He knows how to land elite defensive backs. Michigan just got 2 commits out of the state of Tennessee, and both committed just weeks after getting an offer from Coach Linguist. So I think he was a monster addition. And he has the experience. He's coached with the Dallas Cowboys. Like I said, he's coached down in the SEC, so he has the experience. He knows what it takes to win those battles, and I think he's going to do a really good job as the co-defensive coordinator. I think the other really splash hires came on the offensive side of the ball with Mike Hart and Ron Bellamy. Both of those guys are really, really respected in the state. I think with Mike Hart, he'll be able to obviously recruit his position nationally. He's Mike Hart. He's the all-time leading rusher at Michigan. He has a lot to sell. But also from talking to high school coaches, trainers, everybody that's a key figure in the Detroit metro area, they love Mike Hart. So I think he's going to boost in-state recruiting and keep Michigan in the fold for top running backs nationally. Ron Bellamy obviously won a state title at West Bloomfield, even though he's from Louisiana. He's kind of considered one of their guys, in the Detroit metro. That's what a lot of local coaches talked about, was there isn't one of our guys on staff, someone we can relate to, someone we go to, someone that understands us. And so Michigan's in-state recruiting obviously has had a lot of controversy, but with Ron Bellamy, he's a guy that, has been coaching in the state for a long time, that has won, that has built a ton of relationships with coaches around the area, and they love Bellamy. And he played a key role, and so did Mike Hart in their late push for Rayshon Benny out of Oak Park. And so you're already seeing this staff make a difference, even, in the 2021 class. Like I said, with Benny, Linguist played a big role with Ike Iwuna out of Texas, getting him to sign late. So I think these staff additions were awesome. Mike McDonald's a young, energetic guy. George Hilo, same thing with some Florida connections. You're seeing them recruit Florida more and more and more. And then you still have Sharon Moore on staff, who was one of the top 25 recruiters nationally per Rivals this cycle. So there's a lot to like from a recruiting standpoint. about this staff. Obviously, the next step is taking care of business on the field.
Well, Jim has brought in some very good classes. Maybe not one of them considered elite since he's been here, but, most of them very good. But, a lot of fans are asking this now. I mean, we keep gauging our success on the recruiting trail and in every other way by watching Ohio State and Notre Dame, too, because we recruit against them head-to-head on so many players. But what do you think Michigan has to do better in the way we are recruiting?
Like I said, just building relationships with everyone in a recruitment. Michigan's getting some really nice players. Michigan's always going to have, a top 8 to 15 class. I believe they finished 9 this year. So it's a really, really good class. But there are, only a handful of schools recruiting at that very, very high level consistently. That's Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and those are obviously the schools you see in the college football playoff. I think in the next year you have kind of your LSUs and your Georgias, and then you have, Michigan coming in around that 9 area, recruiting kind of at the same level as a Notre Dame. I mean, they finished back-to-back. But going back to the main question, like I said, it's really developing relationships with everybody, being more active, being more aggressive, offering guys earlier. I think Mo Linguist is a perfect example of the blueprint of what to do. He gets on guys early. He builds relationships with everyone involved. Like I said, Michigan's always had kind of this, I guess, wall up of not doing things in a non-traditional route. So, like I said, building relationships with 7-on-7 coaches, that's exploded. It's kind of become the AAU of football. There's mentors, there's trainers, there's, family members that are involved that aren't the parents. So just having those relationships with everybody, keeping up with those relationships, and those relationships pay off. Look, you had these 2 kids out of Tennessee commit, Taylor Groves and Cody Jones. And with Taylor Groves, Mo Linguist knew his mentor from back at Texas A&M when he got to Michigan. That was one of his first calls, and that kind of got the wheels in motion for Taylor Groves. For Cody Jones, it was the same thing. Mo Linguist landed a top 100 DB at Texas A&M by the name of Eric Young, and he went back to Eric Young's mentor. Eric Young's mentor told him, hey, I have this kid, Cody Jones, check him out. And so, Michigan offered, and he landed a commitment a few weeks later. So relationships matter a ton in recruiting, and Linguist knows how to build those relationships. These people, like I said, coaches, mentors, 7-on-7 coaches, they trust Mo Linguist because he's recruited their kids, he's landed their kids. And so it's the same thing. It's kind of cyclical. I think you just have to do it on a consistent basis. And like I said, Mo Linguist has the blueprint, and now they just have to follow it.
Well, let's switch our attention and talk a little more about the 6 commits that we have in this class. Is very early, as we all know, a long way to go. You mentioned Taylor Groves, a 4-star athlete from Cross Plains, Tennessee. What do you like about this kid, and how do you see Michigan using him?
Yeah, he's listed as a wide receiver on Rivals. He's definitely a defensive back tape. He's a guy that plays a lot of different positions at the high school level. Michigan likes him as a safety. He is long, he's athletic, he's versatile. I was actually told that before Mo Linguist watched his football tape, he watched his basketball clips and was just blown away with his athletic ability. And when he saw that transition to the field, he said, I have to offer this kid. And so he really likes him as a true safety, as a long, rangy guy on the back end with plus athleticism. He is coming off injury, so I haven't seen him recently, but I am definitely excited to get an eval of him.
Well, another one of the kids from Tennessee that we picked up was a defensive back, and man, do we need defensive backs. We know that. 4-star Cody Jones from Germantown, Tennessee. He gave his verbal last week. How good is this kid?
I actually saw Cody Jones in Dallas in January. I didn't really hone in on him because he wasn't a Michigan target at the time, but from the plays I did watch, he was definitely a versatile, athletic guy, and that's kind of in the mold that Michigan sees him. He's listed as a safety. but Linguist actually offered him as more of a corner nickel type that can play some safety. So just a guy that can move all over the secondary. He's another 4-star high-level prospect. From talking to those around the Cody Jones camp, they feel like he can be an immediate impact player at Michigan. He has really good speed, ball skills. I mean, with Taylor and Cody, you're getting guys from the South that have a different mentality that, bring a certain swagger to Michigan. So I think both are big additions on the back end from a talent and an attitude standpoint. I think, this staff, especially Linguist and Hilo, have been telling guys, we want to change the culture. We want to build something different at Michigan. And that's getting some different types of kids too. And I think both of these guys will bring that, different swagger, like I said, to Michigan.
Well, the amazing thing to me is both of the guys we just talked about, Taylor Groves and then Cody Jones, both from Tennessee. And Mo Linguist was on staff about 2 weeks. I don't even know if he was unpacked. And he's offering these two kids. And, we've talked about one of the keys to recruiting, and this has been an age-old story, is building relationships and staying on it. But wow, in 2 weeks, he picked up these high-level commits, which says a lot about how he recruits, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, he's a guy that's had those relationships, that's won those big recruitments. And so he's maintained those relationships. Even when Mo Linguist was with the Dallas Cowboys, he would bring these guys. He would bring the mentors, the coaches, the 7-on-7 coaches that he helped recruit in the past 2 Cowboys games, the Cowboys practices, would show him around AT&T Stadium. So those are genuine relationships. He would get on the board with some of these coaches and just go over schemes. So he really, really has an authentic personality. And I think kids, coaches, they all gravitate to Mo Linguist. Over the last month that I've been, getting information on Mo Linguist, nobody's really said a bad thing. Even guys that don't know Mo Linguist personally, that haven't had the opportunity to interact with him, have said, hey, I know someone that had a great dealing with Mo Linguist. So he does recruiting the right way. He does it the Southern way, which I'm used to from being down in Texas. And you have to win elite level kids. And so even you look at Ohio State, they're going down to the South and pulling kids. Obviously, Clemson and Alabama are already down there. So, I think Michigan can have a high level of success with kids in the South and nationally if they take the Mo Linguist approach.
Well, we're all well aware we need to stock up on that defensive line. And to that end, we've picked up a commit from Alex Van Sumeren. He's from Essexville, Michigan, up in the Bay City area. He's a 4-star and great because we've got to keep kids like that home, don't we?
Yeah, Alex has a brother, Ben, that played at Michigan, and so there's the connection there. He was a very early commit. But Alex is more than Ben's brother. Alex is going to be better than Ben. He's a terrific prospect. I love what Alex brings to the table. He's exactly what you want in a defensive tackle in terms of being mean, aggressive. Alex has a reputation in that area of being a really mean player. I think a lot of people at that level of competition, he doesn't play the best high schools in the state, but you can tell they're just afraid of Alex. They game plan for Alex. He plays a nose tackle spot, but he also plays some 5 and even rushes off the edge. So he's a guy that has experience playing multiple spots along the defensive line. I love him as more of a 3-tech guy. But I think it's cool that he's shown his versatility, especially as Michigan's going to transition to a defensive scheme that allows its defensive linemen to play multiple spots. But like I said, Alex is mean, physical, aggressive. He's really improved and taken the next step in his game. I saw him in game earlier this fall, and he was really impressive. I saw him at a couple of private workouts. He has a quick get off. He does a really nice job of splitting double teams, which he faces a lot of. He, lives in the backfield, constantly provides pressure. So not a lot of, bad things to say about Alex. And he's one of the hardest working kids. He's not a social media guy. You don't see him on Twitter posting all the time or anything. He's always working. Every time, there isn't a week that goes by that Alex doesn't send me a workout clip, and he's not posting it publicly. He's just sending it to me, but he's always working. This guy has a grinding mentality. He's an old school throwback mentality defensive lineman, and so I think Michigan's going to be very pleased with him.
Well, that's good to hear. We also have a verbal from Marlon Klein. I have to admit, I really did not know much about him until he committed. He's 6'6", 215. He's from Georgia. He's rated a 3-star right now. Your thoughts on him, EJ?
And Marlon Klein's definitely an upside take, a guy that a lot of people don't know a lot about. He's not really a Georgia guy. He's actually from Germany. So he came over as part of a European program that places kids at different boarding schools. So he just happened to be placed down in Georgia. He's not really in the Atlanta area. He's more in the middle of nowhere, closer to Charlotte. So a lot of people haven't really seen him in person. I haven't had a chance to see him in person either. He's one of the few kids that I have not. But he's obviously has the size at 6'6", 215. He played a lot of wide receivers, so he's more of a flex end. But right now he's still kind of in that development phase. But at the time, Sharon Moore was obviously coaching tight ends before he moved over to offensive line. And he really liked the kid's athletic ability, his upside. And I think he's really valued as a member of this class, as a flex end that could really boom. And I think you're starting to see more schools get involved with Marlon Klein. Ole Miss just offered him last week. So he's definitely a guy that they'll have to kind of fight to keep on board, even though he's only a 3-star guy and he's a European prospect. His upside is so unlimited that more and more schools are starting to get involved with him.
Well, our 6th verbal in this class of 2022 so far is another 3-star, Connor Jones from Monument, Colorado. 6'7", 285. How much tape have you seen on this kid, EJ? Because he's another one I wasn't that familiar with.
Yeah, Connor is from the same program that produced Reese Atterbury. So we talk about, trainers and building relationships with programs, and that's how they kind of caught wind of Connor Jones. Ed Warner actually recruited Reese Atterbury out of the Denver area, and so he went back and landed Connor Jones through that same program. Dudgeon Academy does a really great job of producing offensive linemen in the Colorado area. It's actually a 6-0 academy ran by Matt McChesney, and they call it Dungeon Academy. But Matt used to play in the NFL with the Denver Broncos, so he knows how to teach and develop offensive linemen. I think Reese Atterbury was one of the surprises of last cycle, and I think Connor Jones could be one of the surprises of this cycle in 2022. Reese obviously being in 2020, but he's big at 6'7", 285. He doesn't need to add as much weight as some of these lankier offensive tackles. He still needs to add some weight, but at 285, that's a pretty nice frame. You can't teach height. When Warner was the offensive line coach, he really valued height and length in offensive tackles, and that's what Connor brings. Even though Warner is now gone, Jones has been in communication with Coach Moore, and so it looks like he's still happy to be a Wolverine, but he's aggressive. He still needs to improve some of the technical points of his game, just bending a little better, being quicker. But he does show a willingness to be aggressive, even at that towering height. He's not just a pure pass blocking guy. He loves to pancake guys in the run game. So I think he's a little undervalued as a 3-star prospect. He still, again, has some development to go, but he works with a really, really good program out in the Denver area. So I think he's another high upside guy.
Well, one more recruit, and I skipped over him, and I don't know much about him either. And here in the Detroit area, I hadn't heard much about defensive tackle 3-star Devontae Miles. He's from River Rouge, solid program, really inside the city of Detroit. Rivals has him as the number 49 defensive tackle prospect. Is this kid sort of a sleeper or a project-type player, EJ?
Yeah, he's definitely a project. I saw Devontae at the Under Armour camp in Ohio in the summer, and he just was kind of a big body that was figuring things out. But Michigan has such a need at defensive tackle that they'll take, they took him as a big body athletic guy that could turn into something. He did come along towards the end of his junior season with River Rouge. Obviously led him to an appearance in the state title game. He does have some athletic traits. He did play some AAU basketball. He was initially a basketball guy. So again, the athleticism is there. He's big. He's about 6'3", 6'4", 270 pounds. So he's, again, a big athletic body that doesn't really know what he's doing right now. But if you can coach him up, you can get something. And again, Michigan has such a need for defensive linemen, especially, with there not being a ton of depth on the roster right now and Michigan transitioning over to a new defensive scheme. You have a local kid that has that upside. So they decided to, take a chance on him. He's not Alex Van Sumeren. You know what you're getting in Alex. Alex has a really, really high floor. With Devontae, he has a really low floor, but a very high ceiling. And so he's again, more of a project guy, but someone they think they can mold into a really good player.
We've been talking about Mo Linguist quite a bit, not only here on the show today, but in the few weeks he's been around the Michigan recruiting scene or on staff. He's got big Texas connections, as we know. Do you think Michigan's going to be paying more attention or giving more effort in Texas to take advantage of that?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, he was involved late in the recruitment of Ike Iwuna, the defensive tackle out of Garland Lakeview Centennial. And so, again, those connections paid off. I mean, he's a Mesquite guy, which is the first town east of downtown Dallas, and then Garland's next. So he is from the same area as Ike. He helped him kind of relate to the program, answered some questions that other guys that aren't Dallas guys can't really answer. Yeah, I just got back from Dallas. I landed last night, so I spent some time talking to Ike, and there are just some things that, as a fellow Dallas guy myself, can talk to him about that other people can't. And so I understand how Mo Linguist can relate to those guys. Going down there and spending time with a lot of prospects that Mo is on, he's offered quite a few guys down in Dallas. They're all really high on him early on. They all feel like they can connect with him. And so I do think that Michigan's going to use it to its advantage. They landed two guys out of the state of Texas this cycle in Ike Iwuna and Tavier Dunlap. I think they can land twice that number and even better talent in the 2022 class with Mo Linguist on staff. So they're definitely going to try to take advantage of guys in the Lone Star State with Mo Linguist's connection. And once you get one guy, two guys, it turns into three, so you can really get the ball rolling, and I think Linguist is the guy to do that.
Well, final question for you, EJ, before we let you get away today. We're still early, as we know, very early in the 2022 process. Do you expect Michigan will get many more verbals this winter or spring, or will the process sort of slow down a bit now until kids can visit?
That's an interesting question. A lot of kids are looking to lock in spots. They want to make their decisions and then maybe visit schools, and you'll see a lot of late movement during the cycle. But, yeah, I do actually think that Michigan could get some more verbal commits. There's a lot of kids talking about making early timelines or making early decisions. And even these last two commits, you had Cody Jones and Taylor Groves committing blindly to Michigan. They've never visited. They committed because of Mo Linguist and his Southern connections. And I think Mo Linguist can continue to land Southern talent despite not, having guys on campus. Kind of going back to your last question, Ohio State's come down to Texas and landed Jeff Okuda, J.K. Dobbins, Baron Browning. They have Quinn Ewers, the number one prospect in 2022, committed. So Michigan's capable of doing that in the South, and I think Mo Linguist can lead the way. But going back to this question, I do feel like they can get some more verbals from that area with him kind of taking the lead on those recruitments. But from an overall standpoint, you also have local guys like Will Johnson. That's arguably the top prospect or the top guy on the board for 2022. He's looking to make a decision this spring, and honestly, I know when Will's making his decision. I can't just unveil that right now, but it will be in the fairly near future, and I think Michigan's in a really good spot there. You have Dylan Tatum at West Bloomfield, Rivals 250 prospect, 4-star athlete that's looking to make a decision at some point this spring. So a lot of guys locally and nationally want to make early decisions. You've seen guys fly off the board. I mentioned Quinn Ewers, who's a 5-star guy, is already committed to Ohio State. Damani Jackson's a 5-star guy, already committed to USC. So guys are flying off the board and they're making commitments. I don't think the pandemic is really holding back decisions as much as, when you look at it logically, it should be, but it's really not. Guys are getting ready to pull the trigger.
Well, in our game day segment this week, our guest has been Michigan recruiting insider EJ Holland from the Wolverine and Rivals. First time on the show. And we could go, I know, on and on about recruiting. It just never ends. I know your readers, my listeners, can't get enough of it. So, EJ, we thank you for taking the time to join us, and we look forward to that next visit.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
On Quick Hits today, the Big Ten tournament has been moved from Chicago to Indianapolis in March for safety reasons. That doesn't mean we'll actually have a tournament either. There is a growing concern that getting all of these student athletes in one place might not be a good idea this year. For now, though, the tournament is still on. Football season ticket holders were sent notice last week that renewals will begin in April. Ward Manuel was clear that he has no idea how many fans will be allowed to attend games this fall, but they are moving forward. Rest assured, the athletic department is considering every possible scenario for fans being in the Big House this fall, and we might not know the plan until sometime this summer. So it looks as if Saturdays in the Big House won't be normal yet, but it will be better than having an empty stadium like last year. That will do it for another show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Have a great Wolverine week, everyone, and until we meet again, take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!